ngala kahichi he tatli shere tinoni tasache xie dian dong ni no xie dian la ti le du a gari ro ji la dong ba xie re gari ri xie ma re la sa ta ti la le
ten what
xie dian ji di de zu ya zhu ma zhu ni xie ga yin de zu de xie ren da.
So now in our study of the vows, we're going to look at the basis, what's called the basis for the vows.
Ndolala nona xie yo ba song re tendi xie di la na ta zu ta ra de xiong ya ni na na mo yin ba ta mo ga no ni na yong ta luan zang ba li dong tendi xia luan pa po na ba long xiu ta lin ye zhe tendi ji lu su ji yo re tendi zhe wong de la na lin sang de mo yin ba ta tendi ji dian tendi.
This word basis usually means a type of life, a form of existence. And for keeping the Buddhist vows and precepts, then mainly this is to do with humans. Although in the sutras we do find examples where non-human beings keep the vows, in particular the lay vows. We find examples of animals, beings that belong to the class of animals that keep the lay vows. But in general, and particularly when it comes to renunciates, those who are monks and who are nuns, then this is nearly always humans. In the traditional geography of the universe, then there was Mount Meru and the 4 continents, and of those 4 continents, then the humans on 3 of them are suitable for taking renunciates vows, but not on the 4th continent, the northern continent. So that's all we're going to say about that point. It can be developed into all sorts of details, but just leave it there. So then what we'll look at amongst us humans are first the lay precepts and vows. The one basis for all of the precepts is refuge. Whether one's a lay practitioner, a novice, or so on, then all of those work from the basis of refuge, which is the fundamental commitment or bond. This means refuge in the 3 jewels, the 3 most precious things.
리니지 요 바레더라. 용지 리니지 요디 되라나? 다 가로 몸바 세지. 미히바 세제다 용지 리니지 킬량 거 바레. 디 리니다 가로 글로 바레. 대니 요디 되라 로루지 요고 바레. 로다용 로지버 세 마리 가로서 로루지 요고디. 되라용 디 로두 jel로제더라 로루니도 킬량 거디. 배 대견다 가로서 내지나나 로토지 고니 내 메도 내 문디 디나 동보 멤바지 킬량 거디가 멤바지 킬량나 멤바디 멤제지라 소바다 멤바디 가레라나 샤지에가나 오초 라근디 매 카모사가나 오스 nga 사이 라근디 원카 제나 온 디데 라근디 디 가레라라다 몰냐거디 디 지서 디 멤바더라용 니요 무보요레 니요 데디 공라라다다 나로나 편도 요기레 네더라 편도 요디디라 디용 몰라냐 더용 네 도비 차견이的 这你 용 도니의 这个 에 대견다 다 나로 그 jel라 녀모 발라서 바둥아 통지 몸보 시지요 바래 데 시지요지 데 롱도지 고니 세가나 세티키메레 다다 세 히칸지도 드리지 뉴가레 다다 세게 세워리지나 이대지 감데라 송지 마도 요바 말에 데인들라 데라나 게겐다바 지나다 면바다바 지나다 노나나 로밤 지나다 송지 지나다 가리라가나다 니 가리도는 딘디 데거지도 키량거디 tomba 디 tomba 디 송이 취더 론에 두거디 베나 게겐을 따디 데라네 리니 용거디 게게 공라라던 가로 로주 제거디와 와야 명호노 소나용 명비 공라라던 가로 냐거디 샤제거나 제거디 카제거나 제거디 된제건다 노나나 송지가 송이 취더 가로 론에 두거디 디 론에 두비고 조 론에 시작했다 겐드바 라리 디나나 겐드바냐도 저거디 가레디나 로로라 야부 제건디 디마 로로라 야부 마제나 게게하고 뒤저런디 나라 배도 문디 카통아 나로나 생각가 뭐 못해건디 베나 네요 그거라 마냐나 나라 노파 뭐 못해건디 베 대견다 겐드바라요 드루피차다 다루고차도 소래 디인데 베나 다 덴디조 베도 이거 야나 니가서 리라본다고 지요선 누가 대소
We take refuge in the three most precious things, which are the Buddha and the Dhamma and the Sangha. And to give some examples of this, then if we take first education, a small child, just as that small child is, using its own qualities it has when it's 4 or 5 years old, it can't achieve very much. And so it needs to go to school, it needs to learn. It needs to learn from a teacher, and it needs to go through all of the stages of learning the various topics in the curriculum of the school, to learn about history, geography, all of those different things, and then also to be helped in that by the older students and the teaching assistants and so on. And that way, as the years go by, then the child grows up and becomes a very well endowed adult with lots and lots of knowledge that it didn't have at all in the first place and had no way to acquire all by itself in the first place. The only way was to go to the place where people had the knowledge and to acquire it. Or if we take another example, which is that of medicine, if one is sick, then there are many, many sicknesses we just don't have the means to cure by ourselves. We have to go to a hospital, see a doctor. The doctor knows what he's doing or she's doing. Let's just assume this is the case. And then if the doctor says, I'm afraid you need an operation, then you say, okay, I have an operation. And if the doctor says you need a blood transfusion, have a blood transfusion. If the doctor said you need an injection, you take an injection. They say you need to take the pills, you take the pills. And so you follow the system, and then there's not just the doctor's got nurses. And the nurses, they come and they say, are you taking your medicine? Are you taking it properly? And have you done this? And have you done that? And they look after you. And in the end, all being well, you get better. So if we take these examples, then just as the child at the beginning can't do it by himself or herself, just as the person who's sick can't become cured all by themselves, then at the beginning, even though we long for liberation, we long for enlightened qualities, we just don't have what it takes to find them by ourselves. So we need to go to find someone who did that. And in this world, there is only, in our recent history, one person who so fully, perfectly and immaculately achieved liberation and all of those qualities, and that was the Buddha. So we turn to the Buddha, and then we apply the method which corresponds to all the topics on the curriculum at school, or to the taking of the medicine in the hospital, whatever it is. So these are practicing the various practices of the Dhamma. And then in that process we have the Sangha, who are what are called our friends, companions on the path. They're like our older schoolmates or like the nurses in the hospital, and they make sure that we're doing what we ought to do, doing it well. So on the basis of refuge, then we take precepts, and the precepts can be summed up as the eight precepts. There are many different sorts, but there are 8 main ones. And so these are called, in Tibetan, they're called nyenye, and this means dwelling in virtue, dwelling within what is happy. So it's like staying virtuous, staying happy. That's the meaning of them. So. So the 8 precepts have 4 basic precepts, 4, how can we say, most important precepts, and they are not to kill, not to steal, not to lie, and not to commit sexual misconduct. They are what is known as the branch of right conduct. So then the 5th one is not to take intoxicants, and this is called the branch of care, taking care, or being heedful is the branch of care. And it's because taking intoxicants diminishes our care and sense of responsibility, and then that can lead to the other actions.
Teni maten chento. Oya teni lakar. Shiru kazi. Degsa. Digu je ya. Maten chento. Tata tirandi. Dirandi. Oni marandi. Maten chento. Karsu. Chinsu.
Chinsu.
Tara Bodong Shegare and the Sanka Jid, Chinsu Jid, Maten Chento Katwa Jid, Shirukazi to Bodong. The single about the Marita and Gessica Domino.
So then the next one, phenomenon number 6, this is not to wear adornments. So this means jewelry, cosmetics, perfumes.
Shirukazi, Kaji, Maten Chento, Ni, Gaso, Sam, Gaso, Gonolana, Tima, the Garno, to Denore. Carla Soba, Son, the Comedy, Garso, Gi, Maten Chento, Ni, Shirukazi, Sam.
Sorry for the confusion. We're looking at two different things. Anyway, so numbers start again. 5 was intoxicants, right? Number 6 is dancing, and so on. So that's dancing, singing, and music. That's number 6. Number 7 is not to wear jewelry, cosmetics, and perfumes. So it's what's the word? Adornments. There must be something like that. You know, dressing up, making it more elaborate than it ought to be. And then the third one is not to eat after noon or after the prescribed time. So that should make 8. So.
Tasala, Usu Karasu, the Nina Maten Chento, Shirukazi, that is on Tigujan Law, Dimila. Certain Jayan law, oil being law, Tigujan law, the jet, some to the thing what you do, such a Jayan law, the Zavay. The knee, oil Jayan law, the Chung, Tigujan law, the Jima Sandua, Maten Chento, Shirukazi, Garsu, the Sam.
So these last 3 belong to the category which is known as discipline, or we can call it self-control. So that means we've got 3 main categories. The 4 root ones belong to the category of right conduct. Then the not drinking alcohol belongs to the category of taking care. And the last 3 about singing and dancing, dressing up, and eating after noon belong to the category of self-control or discipline. Those 8 come directly from the teachings of the Buddha. In Tibet, through the teachings of the great master Atisha, there were 2 more which were added to this. One is to be vegetarian, and then the other one is to drink water, to drink only water after.
Challenge. Benangaroso Kajon, Chete, the Tung, that in the shade were union duty. Only at the Kajon, Challenge Larry, Chapago Challenge, Challenge Larry, Chadina Cherry, Challenge. Carilla Ledina, Benang walk for sooner, Nipa officer, the Curton, the new canon, Samara, the Pa, Kajon, that in the shade.
So this is to do with, it's like in the Nyungne practice, it's when you, it's restrictions on taking food after the appropriate time and only taking water to...
The disorder, and you got 2 gilly de Mayoba, Mare, Nima Gila, Chiso, Yakitera, you got 2 giga, Dombare, the Dimati, Domasonga Mareta.
Dinya, Nima Chimato.
Nimaji de Mamere, then you got to do. You got 2 gilas on it, you got 2 gidina, and you tell you. So you might catch a bad Dombalare, then Nimaki de Domasonga Mare.
So those last 2 are precepts taken for 24 hours. They're taken until the sun shines the following morning.
The Yaniga Dombare, the Nina, da Ginhanga Domba. Tatika alone, Shandro, Shasons in Ginhan, Jido, Yani Castle, Shandro Domba, Niore, the Ninth Karmapa Shasons in Big Ginhanda, Tikila Domba Songere, Yani Castle Shandro Dombata. And
when it comes to keeping those precepts, then although the precepts are the same, it's different. There's a big difference between somebody who takes them for life and someone who takes them for 24 hours.
다 대시 거지 가래오래 라나는 배낭 알아서 개념가 돈바치 휴교지 이거 다 년이 연락 제비 그 돈바치 놓나 가래래로 지리 렌돌레 라나는 소종래로래 소종라고 쳐로 가래 니마 키리 돈바군이라고 돈로 키고 봐 말이 고로 소종래로 가래 Then you don't buy Minkachina, Koro Niniana JP Domba the Hiditella, Koro Domba Muni Tondovare. Then you Genia Jiguna, Domba Muni Tondo Jimere, Caridina, Homani, Genia Domba Jella Yorenga, Dinora, Niniana, and the Henya Domba Yan told you, the Togo di Delano, the Sojon Renovare. Genia. Gigo, Yanni Yanlo Jepaji, Domba Huna, Genias Hakodu. When I tea, Yanni Yanlo Jepak Domba Huna, Sojon Renori. The Domba Tomare Yanni Domba Tomare, Coron Sojon Renori, Kujala Carolina, Genia Domba Yore, Genia Domba, the Hore, Yanni Yanlo Jepi Domba. Hakoson. Bena Gesela, Genia Domba Hugamare, Coro Gesa Domba Hido de la Genia Ridiore, Tinana Genia go, Yanni Yellow Jepi Domba Huna, Hichure, Yanayo Domba Mare, Coro Sojon Hakodi,
Sojon Gitandakare,
Coro Sojon Rendo Hure. 소송 쳐도 그래. 하고서.
Okay.
다 너자 같은 개념이라. 파제 개념 인지를 못 해. 당가로 년년로 제바지 된디 dombalona. 년년로 제바 하고 돼 최소지 제기 년년 dombal량진도야. 가던 초바 소진도야. 된디 진 롱나. Dini kari rendo dina sojong rendo hiore dime damba to hioba mare. Pena che genyara. Ta che genyen yanlo jipi damba chikina. Ta che kari rendo rela na. Che nyen yanlo jipi damba de che la to mare. Che sojong rendo di damba. Damba chola to sona chu damba de chiso nyek tsagi no meba chalo re chu genya damba de ngero re. Ha koso. Kare dina nyen yanlo jipa da dono genya damba yo mare. Ko nyama ji kere nigo ni kere ko sonji damba re. Damba pe memba re. Kaso damba tsani pa chi don yo re. Topawa ji yo re to je yo re la so. De nyen yanlo jipa nyama ji de me damba yo mare ko pena dirira nga domba hyuna nga nomba re nga jela domba du re ti soni ne nga nomba re mandu nga domba tongsa so nga nyama ji de me domba lo ma so ha ko so to domba topa wa ro domba tseni ba mare genya ji sa du de la nomba tseni ba re ko no kare len di jina shma so ji ba de la domba hi hi re genya ga domba nyen yan lo je ba da domba hina shma so ba mare nyama ji kere mare ti domba to domba Deni nga genyen chen ji ge nyen yan lo ji bi damba ji kena garin de chuan de la na su jong ren de ha ko so damba de to ni ban de genyen ge damba ni ban de ko so na de wa hyo ban de chuan de da ya bu ki so
Sorry for the delay. Feeling quite stupid today. Not functioning well up top. Yeah, it's simply that there's a difference between taking precepts for 24 hours and taking them for life. And you can say that you have the, what is it called, upasika, or whatever word we use. If you take those precepts for 24 hours, you've got those precepts for 24 hours, but you've not become a novice monk for 24 hours, or a novice for 24 hours. That's what it means. It means you've simply observing that degree of pure conduct for 24 hours, and after the 24 hours, it's lost. It fades away. You've not become a monk for a day or a nun for a day. And that's different from taking those same precepts through a ceremony for life, in which case you have those precepts for life, and you are what is called an authentic or a fully characterized holder of the of those vows. That's it. It's difference between the two. And yeah, that's it.
Tindi pena nga genu ina nga gesa ga domba yuna nga genu tongro re nga genu memba choro re gesere nga gesa chi genya domba hyuwa na nga genya re do le nga genu menji andi gesa menji re nga genya chi go pena nyenyi nyalo ji bi ga domba hyo ti domba hyo tong de ma hi na nga genya ga domba meba choro
And so there's an order to these things where the one is superior to the other. So first we have the temporary vows for 24 hours, then you have those same vows but for life, and then the different levels of ordination. And when you've got the higher level, it automatically incorporates all the lower levels. And Rinpoche is saying, if, for instance, he's a full monk, and then if he took the novice vows, it's almost like losing the full monk's vows. There's no need for that, because it's already included in what he's doing. We should understand the order of progression in those things. It's like a next step on. It's different taking it for one day and having that one day commitment than from having the vow for all of your life. And what he didn't say, but where part of the problem comes in, is that this word vow actually means what happens to your mind. It doesn't just mean the rules you observe. It means what happens to you.
Tadi yang detail, domba kari Tokyo, kari Regio, Yapoha Kongudu, the Jima Chita, domba ten major, which was when I pick Kali Kavara, not domba yo, and in the Jima Kali Chita on the day. Oh, not domba ten, Manu, Lord Sassus on the Pekali Kavara. G. Polaki Logi Kejore. Here Lala Karise Origina, Ndava Sono, Lokemore, or the Ndavata so by your chari. Tombo Ama Tema, here's a Tindipatanu. Look, Gambo Chow on the Teletin Davatanu. Then Data on the Low Gamba Chop and Gay, Low Gamba Pejidore. Did you tell Data on the not Doma Hamani? Oh, certainly, Bangano, Bengalere, certainly, Kejore. Could you have the Mahako Himere, Dava Martina, Doma Carri Hakomodua? Then he Davatan, so no Gambo Chow on the Tadi, did the town on the Terra, Hira Lala, so Noma. Did the Terra Gambo Chow, the Terra. Dombang ha chundini Ketara, Haja. The Gambo Chow on the guitar, the Dombang Haman Lord Sandy. Then he coping a Hiore. Ah, Tanga dream this is being a Hiore. Then he Hiore, Pretendo, Maroso Domba Kadi, Tokyo, Kare Mayahio, Tata Mahina. Then you Domba Kari Carri Hakomandi, was it the Nirachon, the Pekali Kabarindua?
The Rinpoche saying it's important to understand this progression in the different sorts of vows. And that you go from the one up to the next, and that you don't need to go down to take a lower level once you've got the higher level. It's important to know the vows that one's observing and to understand them, and where they sit in the order of things. And he's saying, for instance, in the Shedra, in the monastic colleges, they studied lots of things over many, many years. And they studied the Abhidharma, the sutras, logic, all sorts of things. And the study of the Vinaya, which deals with the vows, actually comes towards the end of the curriculum. And he says there have been cases in Tibet where monks, who've probably been monks ever since they were tiny, they come to this studying of the Vinaya, and they start to see really what observing the vows means. And he said they start crying because they realize that through all of their ordained life, they've not been doing what the Vinaya says they ought to do. And so they really, for some it's a catastrophe because they think, I thought I was being a monk, and in fact, I wasn't doing it how it ought to be done. So it is important to understand.
Gesa Huananda, Genya Huananda, Karionanda, not Domba the Tandizo Togandu, not Domba the Songandu, Tanda, Pamipan, the Dizo Chorandu, the Yapu Higandua, the Mahina de Tomerindua, the Inachoroso, Pog Lage Gamanda Chona Himari, the Indina, Dombakari Tokyo, Kari Mahina, the Yamakila remains on the Gadimeri Hako Humara, the Nina, the Nichosana, the Yapumandua, the Inana. Genya, Octanga Genya Natina, or the Meva Carizo Chondo Yapochako, the Yamakili Mesona, Harokadi Mes Hamana, then Dimedua.
So it's, and what you were saying before about the monks who cried, they were the ones who actually joined the Shedra when they were quite old monks already. So they've been monks for many, many years all their life, and then towards the end of the Shedra they come to see the Vinaya. And it's a nasty blow to realize. So he said it's very important then, if one takes lay precepts, if one takes novice precepts, whichever one it is, to understand exactly what the commitment means, to understand what it is that makes you lose it or to damage it, how that can be repaired, if it can be repaired, and so on. They said, of course, you're not old monks in the Tibetan Shedra, so it's not exactly the same circumstance, but it's good to know what you're doing as far as these commitments are concerned.
Lana de Jovara, not Ora, Mare. Gomba, the Rizu Tore, Tadoman, Susan de Yuri. Yuma, Tatuan Juna, no but the Rizu Mendo Yuri, the Mahina, Ndiri lana injil ndiri lara ra. Ndiri lana engo thabara pejora.
So, saying, for instance, if somebody's taken lay precepts and somebody who's from outside, not a Buddhist, comes and says, "You're a Buddhist?" Yeah, I'm a Buddhist. And what are you? Oh, I'm an upasaka. I'm observing lay precepts. And they say, "Oh, yeah. What does that mean? What exactly do you do?" And then if you don't know yourself precisely what you're supposed to be doing and observing, he said, then that's a great cause of shame. Or even if you know the rules, but then somebody says, well, actually, how do you keep that? How do you manage to keep that rule in these circumstances? You don't know. Then this could be very awkward. We need to understand.
Yapo Hako Hichiganu, Tangarazo the Germany. The Niti Hichajin, that Gesaka, Sonza Hipicasela, Teso Hiji, that are Sonza Kogi, Ricky de Unduti, Genyanko, Mariniani, Yellow Jepico, Sonza that are Gesaka Songere, the Niti Castle and the Hiji. That is what the need try.
So excuse me. These basic precepts for the lay practitioner that were developed very briefly this morning then become the foundation for going on to the novice ordination, which we'll look at this afternoon. But now we still have some time left in the session for questions.
Tatra go to go chundu. Ndiri yambandi on the Cariona Gaboyo, Cariona.
Doesn't have to be questions about this particular topic. Really, Rinpoche says, really can be questions about any aspect of Dharma. Yes, that was. Uh-huh. Is that similar to your question? The Garsok sum yarewa. Garsok sum the Techsherona, the Driwa Chikre, then the Warangi Driwa Pacha Chikpare, then the Mama the Chuluki Gaso Yena, Diganda, second Chuluk Mepene, and Nampaki Chuluk, Pena Yeshiki Chuluk, Lutong Yore, and Kashizepore.
Tata Kareki Yuri Lana no Niani and Lodge here. Niani and Lodge Casala so ta Rongo Nora Sonandi Yala Yon Gomada Nola Chete Gombanola so that in the Canana Send you at Tisola and the Union Radu Tindisendua Niani and Lodge between Son that in the Secure. Tindula Nyamaki la re, Nyamaki Kerala. In Nyamaki Kerala, Karsula Supata, Sejet, Chulugo Punjumandu, Oya, Jitian Punjumandu, Nova Yegos Hiena Chulugo Carion and Dimandu, and the Jitian Picarian and Dimandu. Hakoso. Can you hakumas?
The Chulugi Kokrasus.
Chulugi and Dimandu, he said Chumandu. Chulugi man and he said Chumandu. So Taba Yegos in the Silingo. Sota. Koron Tukariki in a Koron Yegos said, don't you see him as you are Ampanjuki? Koron Yegoni. Hakoso. Then as long in the Wajina, so in the Corona Trench, you were a quote the Yigashigara, Bena Injilumba in Injilumba Jaka Corona Tranchiora, the Yosi Dima, Shija Yamba Tran, Sono Tomara, Corona, Yosi to Juretina, Soso Tabaca Maritando, Soso Tabica Chuluga Carina and Nitampi Carina and Katsuan Dimadu, Sechumadu.
Then Nimachiki Dompamato.
Dompa Yamachik Dombare.
The mato the soibado ke dompayana.
Kandi Domba.
The Kenyan.
Genya Dombayina, Carson Tisusi, Genya Noni, Sonsho Genya don Gomi Genya, Dika Sale on Matu Tila, Shisha to Juga Genya, Nachi Sopa, Nanga Sopa, Pache Sopa, Yumuzu Sopa, Casona, Lacario Mare, Domba Songa Mare. Genya. Genya le ri dans yore. Ri dans noni. Ri ngala kasu kanta chure le lian chure. Genya. Hakoson. No genya mare. No nyani re. Nyani ne nyama ji kere re. Genya Sonsho Genya do gome Genya ina. Teni laga se chumandi. Genya le ri dans. Dog noni, ri ngara se chudu, la lian chudu, carchon chudu, ri ni se chumadi, Hakoson. The Nyani Dombare, Genya Mare, Nimakiri care, Genya in a Tichik Dombare.
So, there are the vows for 24 hours, and there are the vows for life. Mainly what we were looking at today were the vows for 24 hours that one observes. It's what lay people can take for 24 hours. Then when it's for life, then there are 7 different categories of taking that for life. So in 5 of those categories, then singing and dancing is allowed, and in 2 of the categories it's not allowed, and in the actual talk and the teaching program we didn't come to that yet. So maybe when we get to that it's allowed. But in general it's these are called the vows for self-liberation. So they give us a code of conduct, a set of discipline, which enables us to distinguish between the ways of the world and the ways of liberation. And we observe the conduct as a way of helping our mind to liberation. So depending on which of the 7 types, if one has those 8 precepts for life, then depending on which of the 7 ways of taking those 8 precepts for life one is following, then singing and dancing are either allowed or not allowed. Best I can do.
Tando dina carriere la nana nyani ga dombala kantra chumudi. Nimachi ga dombare nimachi dimension komandi. Korum.
So, to put it briefly, and one thing Rinpoche said before is that mainly we take these precepts for 24 hours when we're attending things like Nyungne in a temple, when there's a gathering, when there's a particular occasion. So when it's like that, it's very straightforward, no singing, no dancing. For those 24 hours, you're focused on the practice. No singing, no dancing, no ornaments.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes what I find when occasionally my mind gets a little bit settled in meditation is that my gaze relaxes and it's just resting. But what happens is that I'm aware, very likely, of everything around me, sort of panoramic awareness. It's not that my visual consciousness is completely not functioning, but it's just that it seems a very, very light awareness. Is that the correct approach, or should we just be
That's one question.
That's one question. Do you want the other one now as well?
Uh-huh.
The other question then is about blessing. Rinpoche mentioned this morning that we pray for blessing from the Lama.
Uh-huh.
And this is something that seems very central to the Kaji lineage, but it's something that as a Westerner I have difficulty relating to. And so Rinpoche explain a little bit more about what is blessing and why is it so important.
Mm-hmm. The Juani are the Dampo Tatangiko, Katsangi Lujine, then Tatangiko, and then the Nansha Nampa Dunginang, the Tatang, the Nagi Soshigi, Lumna, then Kongi Dijabna, Dijena, then Kamakashi Gijela. Then Mikul Chepa Chenyo Mare, Yene Yang Kampaginang la Gang Yena, the Hakugendo, the Sowo Mare, the Sengi Mikul Sowo Re, Yang Mikul Sowo Matok, the Gekor Drabo, the Shipa Yore, the Dikenduge, the Rebe. Nipa de Chinnapi Korum, Pena Dering, the Shiniki Konkinganla, then Tawelamala, so on that Gokindo, so on that, then Kajuki, Tempaginanga, Chinnap, Ketchamambo Yore, then Nupchok, la Chinnap, Kapkap, la Hakugimin. Tetsuken Sabore, Chinnap, the share on
our Travat Nipa the Payapundu, Travat Tombo the Kichatis or him. Tindira, Travat Tombo the Pena, Mix for Yoga, Tanswana, Tatandi says you can make Tasa the hero, Hinino. Hinino here did the Miga Taton, Pena, Taton Yati, Lananda, Party Lananda, Taton Higari, me, Nona Cassia Gadilla, me, Ya, my Tasa Higari, Tasa here, the man, Mozo, Tom, what on Doton, the Mipa go then here, Mamari. Tata Carre, La di Delana, Luyata, La di me, sent in here, sent here, Meditilla, Migun Mozo, Zoom Tomaton, Tondotin, Dino never made. Karedina Migata, Nilizuki Tagadira, Migataton Sigari, Taton, Tan the Ligila, Tati, and the Races, the Kibri do it. Then no other than a Hana Didias and Dimare Lagita, Motra look at it, to a Yambachi. The man was no to do to a chow Mare. To a Yambachi, no to Doganoni to a Mare. No, you don't know any. Look what I hear already. Send no Hama hear me. Then no I read it, send ready me. Look it to let him do. Send and drive you do. No, you did send and drive me batombo. Look you here, the Tirana, me pass at the Pon, Manton, do tea, go me. Tony, that send the don't hold you the Didias and Dimari Lana. That Tiring are on the same Yota keeper, Chokatora, Lenduare, to a Sabaki, the Macasson to a Chomere, Cason to Vanola, Zuntomo to Himandu, me, Lopokera, did the Makimere. That Cason to a man, indeed, to a Goda. Sang a piano, Tom and Tom says it, Cho Moshu says it. Pena diri kari here regina, Machupa Roba Yosere. The Roba Yodi delana, Ton deona, Ton di Roba Yogare, Mantona, Manton di Roba Yogare. Reti, Heni Gonton Momboyore, Pena Henila Mipa Yambachi Seduina, Tudila, Mipa the Talatien Gavare de Metica Azala, Tizuta. Hako Huma Maradime, these Zudin Tomodina, these Zudel Mipaleona, Mipachipo Insare. Yet, lots are it. Tis Zula is a remiba. San Momo, San Kitty Mary, San Kimedi, Pena, Cabo Gon di Tela, Mabo Tona, Mabo Chansa di Tela, Cabo Lotsari, Cabo Lotsaswan. Cabo Yon Mabo Yon Ray, the Vajida, San Lehi over Mari. Kitchasina? Tila Tona and Jin did Medipa Mary. Matona Medipa Mary, that the Rigota like Sonotona, Marasum Hachiba Yula Swan. Hachibigan, then Tona Tony to the Gogari, Matona Maton to the Gogari.
Rinpoche first said that the second question is an excellent question, and but that wasn't at all a reflection on the first question. It's just that the second question was an excellent question, and that for the first question, what we looked at yesterday was the 7-point posture of Vairochana, and this is called the way to set the body. And that is just what it is. It's nothing at all to do with what's happening with the mind. What happens with the mind, well, that depends on each practice and on the instructions for the mind about whether it's okay to do this, not okay to do that, whether what happens when the awareness is here or there. It's another question. So there it's physical. It's to do with the body. What do we do with the legs? What do we do with the hands? And then what do we do with the gaze? Which is a very important part, as he suggested, of our physical activity. So there we just settle the gaze, some 4 fingers in front of the nose. It's a very mechanical, sort of physical thing. Then for what happens with the mind, well, he said this will vary according to each instruction. For instance, today we had the very first instructions of Shamatha, where it says, don't follow the past, don't anticipate the future. Then in the present moment, rest, have the mind naturally settles on whatever occurs without contrivance. So then, as far as once your body is in the posture and your gaze is settled and everything else, then today's questions about, for instance, peripheral awareness will be connected with today's meditation instruction. So it's when the mind is settling in the present moment without contrivance, then if there is peripheral awareness, blah, 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 that sort of question comes up in relation to each one. There isn't a general answer. So if it was in relation to today's instruction, then if, just from the way the gaze is parked, if it happens that what's arising naturally in the mind at that moment is something visual because of the gaze, and it's a colour red, you wouldn't be thinking about the colour red, following it up, trying to change it into a colour white. You wouldn't be engineering your mind at all. Whatever came up will be that very instant's focus of meditation. And then what comes up the next instant would be. So then the mind's questions go with each practice.
Di la jetala ni yichi yapuchi yogon re la re ni. De yichi yapuchi yogona, pianto yapuchi yogon re ni la re. Tozo di tela no, ta pian toje de, xiang la se je de, pian toje de la go re. Te di me yanba yoba re. Di na, la mi xiang la de, luma la ro li re. Xiang la ato mo to de. Lama la xiang la ayo me yo de, la mi ma song ji ge, ju de la ro li re. Lama xiang la de. Loma la ato mo to de, xiang la de, rong lo mo lo de, ato mo to de, kari lo ri le de na, lo len tu ji de la ro li re.
If the second question about the blessing, if we take today's explanation, then in there Rinpoche explained that if we have faith and devotion in the Guru, then we have confidence in the practice. If we have confidence in the practice, absolute certainty in the practice, then we practice it very well. If we practice well, then we get the benefits of the practice. The blessing are the benefits of the practice. That's what it means. There's real benefit. That's the blessing that comes. That's the meaning of the blessing. Taking that particular explanation from today.
Lami Lumata Koron Dondawoji Jaloji Ndawoji Sheni Topikin and Pangabataba. The Lidian Yomari. The Yona Naruto Sunji Hajatabaton. Deni Sunji Samba Shandizi La Supa, Pinji Chimbore, into Katwa the Topikin Pandore, Naruso La Yomari, Koala. Kun Nomagata, Takareo Lana. Ta the Shalada Kunambago, soon you could shoot it. This soon you could shoot wrong on your land, long land you do not. Then you tell us a lot to say me about it. The two soon you the la Shala like you, right? Then he Shala Yapo to automoto, wrong long land to do. Shala Yapo Eomo, this soon you shoot it, right? Then you Lami Shala Lajeta, Lami Karma. Nyan xie dong, gang jie dong. De xian lai. De ni rong le, o mo to nga rong ge, long lai ya bu du mo de. De ni la mi ma song jie de, mu ni ma no ba ji ya bu ji yo. De ni rong ge long lai ya bu ji du na. De ni dung ha li zha de ba to lo re. De le xian la to cha re la re.
I forgot a bit of the earlier translation, and so that's the blessing is the benefit, and how much that benefit is attained depends on how well the person practices, and it's entirely dependent, in fact, on the we can say that the practice, in another way, the receptivity of the student. And then this is the point that Rinpoche is developing in what he just said. It's the qualities and the accomplishment. Everything that we're seeking is there in the Buddhas, it's there in the great Bodhisattvas, it's there in the truly qualified Guru. It's already there. But for us to benefit from what's there, then we need to practice. Without the practice, it can't come in. There have been endless Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. If they could just bless, it would have happened a long time ago. We'd have been blessed out of everything into pure existence. And it doesn't happen like that. It entirely depends not on what the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas and the Gurus can do, but on our receptivity to that through practice. The Buddha gave us the teachings so that we will put them into practice, so that would change our being, and then through changing our being, we acquire the same qualities that the Buddha has, that our Guru has already. It's through the practice that we accede to, that we come to what they have. And so the bottom line of that is how much less suffering there is, how much more true happiness there is in our being. That is the blessing. They have it. They show us how to achieve it. Our quality of practice helps us to achieve it, and that's the real meaning of the blessing.
Muni mo koro zoma mare ko mo nyambare ra mo nyamba ka ga ko la na ko demba zoma uni demba ina demba zoma ra ngaro The Garrigal one is Mother Hapo Mare, San Yapo Mandu, Kunamba Chodin, the Nico Lagitala Dema made Chodore. Mother Yaputio, the Hakona, Ichi Yaputiona, Ti Kava Lagitala Dembazon Mare. Ti Dembazon on the teller, then Maron Panto Mare, ni Tari, Humani Liore. Then Lamala Tepa Gussizi, Cherizina, Ichi Chepachi Tepa Yovan, Ichi Ondilla, Lami Con Lala, the Uni, that Dembaire, Marola Ichi Ore, then he had Lana would do it. Then he Lama Sonja the wrong Panduche which you side the teller, then you won't touch the Lajutari.
And so then this takes us back to the first point, which is or to the point of faith. This development of deep faith is what leads to total trust and confidence, and then the trust and the confidence is what enables the practice. So it is given an example of if you've got two people. One's a crazy person, then one's totally crazy. Another one is a very, like you say, good and wise person. Then whatever you say to the crazy person, doesn't matter if it's true, if it's false, whatever it is, it gets distorted, because that's the very definition of what a really truly crazy person is. Whereas if there's someone who is the opposite of that, very sort of noble, intelligent, good person, then you take care in what you say and what you do. So in this way, in our relationship with the practice, which is embodied in the teacher, then if there is this total trust and respect and devotion, then you'll put your everything into the practice, and then you'll get the results out of the practice. If there's a mixed view, if there's lots of doubts and uncertainty, black and white view, then that's going to very much colour the way in which one actually does the practice.
Ni chola na taba toji ga ta de chola de le yin tani taba ato moto choron la roli le res de mangala roli le mares sonji go un son go re de mangi on de marala chero sala de mare.
Rinpoche says this isn't his opinion, this is what the Buddha says. The Buddha says, I give you the means for liberation, but whether you get liberated or not depends on you. Depends on how you apply it.
Okay. Then Dari Namaga, Churkas and the Tavana was in and Kilaso, Mikilaso, Kari Lason Lana, Penana Kakasala, Chulunda Mandanon, Yon, Suni, Piscina, Gigilana, Pantuyore, the Lason, the Muni Injure, Pantuyore, Re. Tangala tela songs kiore, Cario de Dinana Naronga dance siena Tango Naron Kuku Yuzo dance siena Dome to pick a tabadina and a long tongue to zig a tabata, no but songy big chuno de Manga Yomare, sing Aruga, Kilatan Naronguni. Shishaga Nika Nikala, Pantozi to Divan Juzi. Chulu Yambanola Yojire, Karanina Yojire, Reti, Tayon Nova Sonji, Sonji Hacha TV, Chugonon, then Mepachida Yanganoni, then Yoba, Tayonga Naro Munisena, Pasha Yomaraga Trandi, Sonji Hacha TV, Matan Beach, that Yambanola, then Yojida, my Yomara Trandi. Reti, Tat Yanganola, then Yorin. Narongo Tandu Carregina, ni Hini Gonjitayon. No Bachiva Mare Laia, Matepa Yore Laia, La Gonji, no Bachiva Mare, Matepa La Yore Lari. Chulu Yamba Yore Lari, Matepa said the Buchili cinema, Dona Chulu Yamba, Noma Mai Pichulu Yambala, Yore La Gonjore, Hini Gonji Yores, Makilandu, Reti, 돈이 그 따와 도시 지나라 도미 도비 그 따와 도시 너무 기본 마돌 요방아 요 말이 돼. 네 갈패 도시 요리 가리 요리라나 배는 네 나고나요. 아, 다음에 안 돼도 더 소도 저 야부 요리시 그런 매한테 들으시나 날패 도이 누야. 됐다. 조 같이 힘 지키고 바로 노바 송지비 루텐 데라도 다와 카히 로 카히기라 같이 지키고 말. 더 같이 지키고. 노바 송지비 가르치 해주지나 시와 몸을 받을 때와 도지지 같이 해주 지키고. 대인들 때라는 팬 도지 요요래 때 연나요 노바 송지비 노라 마템 바지도. 등등이 줄을 연발라 요 말을 장 나로 장디. 연나요 다 제세 가지도. 된 잡은 요 원도 때라 당과 마고바 몸보 고공 요라. 배나 노바 송지비는 때도 고나 가서와도 갖고 말아. 대원 야바 줄로도 잡고 온데 디노라 고나. 뭐 때서 팬 도지 된디 요라. 니가를 팬지. 다들 그 팬지 그 도메 도비 그 따와지나라. 롱통 요 거바리 더 메나 너무 바통지 키리 자바니 메터 봐 말이 뒤때 오지도 송지 해자다 봐 기는 인자가 키일한테 오 다트레 문디 줄로 야바노는 들이 도메 도비 그 따와 거 세지 그 지오나 라오나더니 가린디 따주라 내가 요 말을 가지고 텐데
Rinpoche has been thinking about this topic that we entered into and then abandoned earlier on about different faiths. And he said, of course, there are things we can do from faith to faith to help each other in many ways. But and that's really true. And there are many values and many ideas that we share. But he says, in his own view, his own experience, is that he's never found anything, what can we say, precious in another faith that we don't have in Buddhism. So the good things we find in other faiths we have in Buddhism. It's not that you find something that we haven't got. But then what we have got, one thing in particular, which is the teachings on the deep wisdom developed through insight meditation that leads to a recognition of the ultimate void nature of all things, the highest truth. He says he doesn't think that exists in any other faith as far as he knows, as far as he's discovered. And that is the highest purpose, it's the highest thing. And so that's something that we can treasure and know that although many, and then also, he said many other faiths, they have the sort of things we do on an everyday basis. They have visualizations, they have deities, they have concentration meditation. They do many of the things that we do. There are many parallels. But of all the things that we do, most of them are leading up to this recognition of no self, recognition of no self of phenomena, which we call voidness, and that voidness which on the basis of profound vipassana technique leads to ultimate realization of the timeless true nature. That method and that view is not found in the others.
다로 선자도 주제 담아 요리지 드리죠. 해 요래 배잖아라. 디 디노라 추도와나 또바다와도 메바다와 또지 니그 무슨서 디지가 따와의 가리리 거더니 탄도 많다도 야본도서 야본문도 시하고 녀마 가송라는 드리게도 니디 시하고 베 다게지 요래 디 다게지에도 디노라 예키 킬로 요래 무슨 미 예키 킬로 문디 가시 킬로 세 미지 문디 디 돈도 디노라 녀마 따져라 제다는 데리도 쫀도지 디 따와다다 도 농바는 가리 요한도 제 코로 특히하다 니들 좁아진데 거래 기차시 오리리 리바 달리 제거나 시와 가린데 든리지나 니반도 이제 든리서 선노 또 기거래 니메 견주 농비 세메 받다 든리 때니 레요 말이 농비 해다노는 뒤세디디라 배나 어마지 따가나나 달리 견주 마지로 이제 쳐디거래 요바레 메바레 그 가리를 이진리리 그지 따바카서 기거래 생각티도 니도 따바카도 니도 마롱아도 테리비케 도시 노나는 따바카도 기거래 니마 쭉 가리 도린 그 야노마도 가리시시 때니 기거 봐 말이 제마히나요 따바코나 기거래 손노동도 코나 롱테데 손노담마다는 니대통지 시도 생각가리시 수세기요 진리리 이시 해시히나요 더켜도리도래 다지마 마홍바라 언데라 용 해르지 차긴디와 다데리인디 데라나 어마동 해선 데리지 히온디 데라나 디튼다 카통아데 레옹아레 다자 카통아도 손노동도데 레옹쇼레 베나 디존 달리라마 nombrni jaka mombo be kepa chibo zendua be meje gani na loga de kepa chibo ri landua de reji ga zawa de khong songdua khong chung du de la rinwa jong den di se go di ripa de ga de re ni de yin na zwa ga re ko na khong ga ga ji de ni zwa ga de ni che men du khong mombo song re tu ga re se de la khong ga chung ni lo mombo la song no dong cha ji ga de ni de re de re zwa de ga gang gang che ki me re ni me song no dong me mi ji na zwa ji do na gang gang che ki re 갈린테리디 콩 소노 동차 베 메제 로몽볼라 데이당도 소노 동차 저기 개체게도 레고니들라 드니 저발랜데 그나 레라보 쳐노지 그런 게로치보 쳐노지 자드니 레고래
For many decades Rinpoche has been in these over a few decades in these monastic colleges, and he says it's a very big topic of study is all of the different faiths. They don't just study the Buddhist view. And he said, of course, these don't have the names of the faiths. They don't study Christianity in there or the other faiths with those names. But what they do is they study all of the possibilities of the mind for how it can believe in this or that, the existence of this, the non-existence of that, all of the various possibilities of combination of this idea with this basis and so on and so forth. It exhausts all of the possibilities of religion. And he said they spend a long time, he was doing the gesture, of debate and argument about this, and, if somebody puts forward this idea, then what's right with it, what's wrong with it, and so on and so forth. So he says, although it's not a study of the world's faiths in their outer forms, it's a study of the human mind and all of the various forms of faith and belief that it can adopt. And it's from that point of view that they understand the finesse and the purity of the Buddhist view. And he's saying that also His Holiness Dalai Lama for many, many years now has been organizing these meetings between scientists, between leaders of faiths and Buddhism. There's a lot of dialogue that goes on. And he said the conclusion from that is that His Holiness never has problem in dialoguing or answering because of this long-term training, first of all, in understanding the various ways the human mind can think and form itself into belief, and secondly, through all of his years of experience. So whatever the scientists come up with, or the people of other faiths come up with, he's comfortable in understanding it and dialoguing with them, because of that type of training. And he says on that basis he can value what we have.
Pena kiranan diditela nga mate ba xie. Yan ba no ba xie. Teni jo no ba la xiang den du xie. Teni mate bi no ba la de xiang du xie. Koroni nyama mo bo la de zo ba jie yore. Ni ma no ba ji ba nga yin xie de zo ba jie mo du. Song do dong mo du. Manya pena kiranan ni la nga mate ban da wo xie. Ko no ba da wo xie. Ni ma mo bo la nga mate bi ge da ba xie. Ko no ba ge da ba xie ni no ba ge da ba ya bo me lu da xiang pa jie. Ko mate bi ge da ba ya bo me lu ge xiang cui jie. De zo pe ni ma mo bo la zo ba jie de xie re.
So they debate for days and days and days and days, and one person takes the stance of, one particular idea, the other person takes the Buddhist stance, then the person who's taking the non-Buddhist stance tells the Buddhist one just everything that seems wrong with it from their point of view and tries to take it apart, break it down, find the cracks, and then the same the other way round. And this goes on for days and days and days and days so that they can really understand the thinking from both sides.
Mahamudra